Okay, giving another try at this whole video thing. Anyway, there have been a lot of disasters in the news lately. We've had tornadoes, and we see a lot of different things where we look at what it means to do humanitarian aid in foreign countries. We see places like Haiti and, all the things that happened there. And we have tsunamis and tornadoes and earthquakes. And there's always this cry for help. And as a missionary and as a Christian, we feel a need to help people. I mean, it's part of what we do. It's not the primary thing. Our primary thing is to honor God and to please Him. And part of that is extending and showing love to others so that they might in turn find out more about Christ. But many of you may have been puzzled as to why does I keep putting so much stuff up on my Facebook pages and other things about how to purify water, how to make water safe to drink, various what seems like survivalist stuff, and you think to yourself, gee, I don't think I find myself in a survivalist situation that often. And if I did, I probably have enough camping gear in my house to make it work. But what's important to realize is that if you're considering going out in any kind of humanitarian type aid, you'll find that you run short on supplies. We see massive runs on things like bottled water during this hurricane, and I encourage, send more. Great, send more. But a lot can be done as well with some education. When you teach a person how to make water clean, and usually after these storms, there's not a lack of actual water, there's a lack of safe drinking water. And there's a difference there. I mean, if a person's in the Arizona desert and they get hit by a tornado, yeah, it's pretty bad because there's no water there. But in most places, it's not an issue of a lack of water, it's a lack of drinkable water. And this is what puts people in really bad, life-threatening situations. In places like Africa and in the third world, lack of education about how to make water clean causes waterborne diseases, all kinds of children dying, and all kinds of human suffering, all over just simple things like clean water. And it's something that we take for granted because we turn on a tap and it comes out, or, even minimum wage most places now is like $8 an hour, so within an hour you could go and buy, 8 bottles of expensive water at the store. I mean, you could be drinking Perrier all the time and it wouldn't make a difference. But this isn't the case when you get out towards the mission field. You find that your finances are usually pretty strapped, and most people are dying just for lack of information. As the Bible says, my people perish for lack of vision, right? And it's lack of vision, lack of understanding, lack of knowledge causes people to die. Now, I've showed different things in my kit. I mean, I carry it with me all the time, especially in the mission field. Your basic, this is a little MSR filter that screws on top of an Algene bottle, and you see how small this thing is. But I could take a small filter like this, which, has the little deal, you plug one end of it in here, like so, and like that. Chuck the other end into the stream, right? Put a little floater there so it doesn't suck off the bottom. And the other end you screw onto the bottom of an Algene bottle, kind of like this one here I'm making coffee in now. Anyway, something like this, with a different person managing it every so often, could produce all the water you'd ever really need in any kind of short-term emergency for, quite a few people. You can just keep on cranking out clean water. All you need now is a steady supply of the dirty water to put into it. There's a variety of ways to make water clean. The easiest one, of course, is boiling. And I don't know if you can see here on the right, but I've shown this in other videos. I've shown my Guyot Design stainless steel water bottle, but something simple. And these are cheap. I got this at Fred Meyer. Different places have, Walmart or whatever, but this is a cheap cup. This is an enameled steel cup. I like them because they don't burn your lip when you drink your coffee, but the big thing here is it's metal and I can put a fire underneath it, which means that I can boil water in it. And if I can boil water, I can have clean water. And one of these for a giveaway is a really easy deal, especially if you explain to someone this is what's going to keep them from dying from waterborne diseases. Now, if you pair that up with something as simple, I think I got one here, as your simple basic cloth bandana or handkerchief, Okay, you have a really cheap water filtration system. You throw this over the top of the cup, pour your dirty water in there, it gets all the sticks and twigs and the big hunks out, right? And then you boil what's left over, bring it to a rolling boil for about a minute or so, and there you go, good to go. And you can just repeat as often as necessary until you have your clean water. Now, granted, this is kind of the last act of desperation. You can do the similar thing with a tin can as well. You know, if you take a small tin can, and there's some really nice can openers you can get at Walmart that open from the side, so it makes a clean lip, and that gives you a lid. With a piece of baling wire on each side, you have yourself a small pot. These are really simple things, and the cost factor is negligible. And once you can show a few people that are in a situation like this, like if you go into a small African village or you go into a place where people are kind of getting sick from waterborne diseases, and you show them how they can make a couple of cheap pots so they can get things going that way, then that education takes care of itself. It starts to slowly, it propagates. A few people tell a few more people, and your just little contribution of telling a couple of people that, gee, just boil it, you're good, would make a lot of difference. Another possibility, you take like an old clear pop bottle and rip the label off of it. And it's going to be a clear plastic. This is some kind of cheap Mexican soda. Anyway, a clear pop bottle full of water. You, again, filter it with the bandana or a piece of cloth, your t-shirt first, and set this sucker in the sun. Full sunny day, all day. If it's kind of cloudy out, give it a day or two, but you can get a lot of these pretty cheap. What will happen is the ultraviolet light from the sun will actually purify all the critters out of there, as long as you get all the little floaty bits out. It's got to be clear, you know, by pouring it through some cloth or something first. Anyway, these are important things, but on a grand scale, when you look at knowing how to get water, how to make clean water, how to keep yourself from freezing to death or dying in the elements, you know, having enough common sense to know how to use things like a space blanket, or if you take a garbage can liner and how to make it, you know, ponchos and tarps and tents out of things like these, and just basic bushcraft skills. And a lot of that you can find on like Dave Canterbury's site, or there's 100 of them. Go to YouTube, type in bushcraft skills, and you get 100 different videos. But some basic concepts like this will put you first in a position where you're doing well enough in an emergency situation where you can then go help others. And if you're going out on the mission field, some of the basic stuff about bushcraft is what they're living in. We've learned about things like disease and whatnot, but in a lot of countries, even though they're living in that situation, they don't know enough to boil their water. They don't know enough that when you take a dump, you got to cover it. That's in Leviticus, by the way. No, sorry, Deuteronomy 23:12 through 14. In the Bible, it even tells you need to cover it. And the reason why, of course, is that flies from that land on your food, and then you eat basically what came out of you. It's not a good situation. It spreads disease. So these really basic sanitary rules that we learned during camping and bushcraft through, you know, training ourselves, end up becoming the things that we can use to help people who are in emergency and difficult situations. But even beyond that, when we get to the point where we realize that we are no longer dependent upon the trappings of civilization for our sustenance, and we know that we can feed ourselves, we can have clean drinking water, we're not going to freeze to death no matter what the situation is, then the fear of if we lose our job or we can't make our rent payment becomes much less. And because of that lack of fear, it frees us up. It frees us up immensely. Now, in an ideal world, we should have enough faith in God where nothing should cause us fear. But it says, who the Son has made free is free indeed, and we would have no fear. Paul also talks about that once we've been made free, not to step back under a yoke of bondage, and a lot of us do exactly that. We rack up debt to people, we basically entangle ourselves in the world system to the point where basically we can't separate ourselves from it. And one of the ways that helps in that direction is realizing that a lot of the things that we need to live off of are already provided by God. They're already here. You know, there's water everywhere, so there's not really a need to pay $1 for it in a bottle at the store, right? We can make fire from pretty much anything. Okay, there's the old bow drill method, friction drills. I have to admit, I've never got a bow drill to work correctly with native materials. I've always had a difficulty with getting cords that'll hold with that friction, but I found that if you use the hand friction fire, you spin the rod by hand, or the plow method. There's a bunch of other ones, ferricium rods, magnesium flint fire starter blocks, all these things to start fire with, and 101 ways to make a shelter. If anybody grew up as a kid with, well, if you're a boy, most boys have made forts somewhere in the backyard. Okay, the concept's pretty simple. If you have something sharp you can cut with, you can usually go and hack down a few limbs and stack them up and make yourself shelter. And if you use a little thought and a little bit of practice, you can probably do it quickly and big enough to support you and your family and the next door neighbors in under an hour. But the thing to keep in mind here is the reason why I continue to bring in survival skills, in addition to the word and whatnot, is that understanding how to rely more upon what God has provided rather than what man has provided helps to separate us from what the dependence upon this world. It helps us to separate ourselves from dependence upon civilization and man's systems. And if we have watched the news, and we've been on YouTube, which this is going on, much at all, we can get a concept that perhaps our economy is not so stable, and that many of us are only a few paychecks away from homeless. And, well, this is why I do it. This is why I do, and I keep on adding more stuff up about survival and bushcraft and how to purify water and whatnot, because these are basic skills that we can use when we go to help people that don't require massive amounts of donation raising. Myself, I'm not so much at giving the big go ye sermon from church to church to raise funds for the next mission I'm going on. I figure if God's will is for me to go somewhere, then it's God's bill that he has to pay, right? So God will provide wherever it is that we need to go. But I understand that some things, there are larger missions that do need support, but as an individual, it is our job to go and spread the gospel to all the nations. It's our job to help our brothers and sisters when they're in need. And we can better do that if we have some basic understanding of how we ourselves can make ourselves, us and our families, stable in an emergency situation. Stable enough where we can help others. Because I don't think we've got that long before most of us are going to be living in an emergency situation. Especially the way this country is going. Anyway, and again, this is not a point of fear. We need to trust that God will provide for us, and I believe he will provide for us. But if we truly want to be useful when the emergency comes, and rather than just being dependent, it would be wise to do some practice of some of these basic skills of how we would get food, shelter, water, and clothing, these things, these basic things, without relying upon the world system. And I've got some bad news for the guys who are into prepping out there. It's not going to work. FEMA looks at things like that to see whether or not who's got what stockpiled, and in an emergency they'll just commandeer what you have, which helps the general good. You're preparing for the future, but in addition to preparing by storing food and whatnot, I would look at how you can get food, how you can make clean water, how you can go and hunt your clothing. Those type of things is an important thing to consider. Anyway, I'm still working on the whole concept of video. As you can tell, I'm not used to talking to an empty room. The lighting isn't very good, and I really don't have the camera for this. But I'm making a stab at it. Anyway, and until I get better, or next time, God bless, and remember, when you go out in the mission field, don't be careful. Be bold. God's got your back.